Alright, this is my take on a show on in-depth analysis and opinions based on what I played and what others have played, so I hope everyone enjoys. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about terrible campaigns in multiplayer games. Campaigns have been around for a long time, and they seem to be disappearing for a better focus on the multiplayer of said game. Although some multiplayer games end up tacking on a single-player campaign mode just to mark that $40 price tag to a $60 price tag. Usually when you purchase a game that's $60, you expect two things: hours and value. Value comes from whether or not you'll be invested into the game. Think of it like all the gameplay design and story elements wrapped into one big experience, like one big ball, like wrapped with twine or something like that. Then there's hours. Hours factor into how long you'll be playing the game, which is kind of obvious. A lot of hours means content that you might not ever fully explore, which can be looked at as a good and a bad thing. In respects to that, basically, if you find things that you can never explore now but explore later, that means more replayability. You know what I mean when I say that? But then it comes to another thing different. The downside to this is that these types of games have more padding in them and less attention to detail. Think of like Skyrim. There's a lot of detail and there's a lot of attention to detail, but because of how big the game is, there's not too much detail to begin with. If every like open world game truly had all that detail, it would probably take like 6 years to create these games. That's why a lot of open world games are like MMOs, where like large patches of the game have absolutely nothing in them, but then there are select spots that have actual content or actual really interesting things in them. And sometimes when you look at it like that, those actual content pieces aren't even very good to begin with. Yeah. So, a lot of replayability. So, on the other hand, a game with fewer hours might be an awesome experience filled with great moments and good gameplay, maybe along with a good story, but they also don't have a lot of content. So you might discover everything in a few sessions, minus one or two hidden or bonus things. Now, why am I talking about this? I'll tell you. You know how both types of hours have their advantages and disadvantages? Like, yeah, long game with many hours will have a lot of gameplay but not much to it, where a game that has lesser hours might have a ton of fun things happening in like a split second, but it's like there's not much replayability. Well, imagine the bad sides of both sides, and that's what you get when you play Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and Titanfall's campaign. It's awful. These campaigns are awful. They have nothing but padding in them, and they only have a handful of even memorable moments. They have zero attention to detail and zero attention to anything, as a matter of fact. They're way too short and have no replayability whatsoever. They have scripted scenes everywhere, nothing feels organic at all, and worst of all, they're just cash grabs, just an excuse to mark up that $40 experience up by a score. Also, score is like 20. Abraham Lincoln said 407 years ago. That's 87 years. Lincoln Memorial is 87 steps going up to read a book. Alright, back to the topic at hand. Why do Battlefield 3 and 4's campaigns suck? Well, that mostly has to do with the core concept of Battlefield in itself. It's an experience known for its multiplayer and unscripted moments, like this one action called Rendezvous. It's where you jump out of your own plane and fire a rocket on another jet, blowing up that jet, and getting back in your own plane, all in midair. That's just awesome. You can't do this in any other game. Only in Battlefield 3 and 4. I can't. Only in Battlefield. It's an amazing moment. I can't explain it. You gotta watch the YouTube video for itself. It's called Rendezvous. R-E-N-D-E-Z-O-O-K. Rendezvous. Alright. A campaign experience would sound awesome with all that organic gameplay. Except, EA didn't take advantage of it. Instead, they created a Call of Duty-esque experience, full of scripted moments and doing the same thing over and over and over again. Walk into an open field, right trigger. Walk into open field, left click. Walk into open field, occasionally hold down right click to aim. Win, campaign over. That'll be $60. It's a single player experience that has heavily scripted moments and has no memorable things inside of it. Wait a minute. That sounds the exact opposite of Battlefield. The campaign is single player instead of something like drop in, drop out co-op. There is absolutely no organic moments in the entire game, or the entire campaign. Hell, even the physics are all wrong. There's no bullet drop or recoil at all. Who made this crap? Who decided it was a good idea to make this? This game is shipped with two completely different gameplay modes. One half is campaign, the other half is the actual fun, the multiplayer. If you're going to commit to something like this, at least try to make sure that both sides are good. If you don't, one side will literally bog the other experience down and make it less likable. And not to mention, all those resources used to make the campaign could have been used to make the multiplayer experience even better than what it is now. And that truly sucks more than anything in the world. All of that aside, here's my idea of a good Battlefield campaign. It would be a multiplayer experience that would be more story-based, but it would also have two sides to every story. One on the American side, and one on the bald man riding a bear side. Each team would have objectives on each map, both primary and secondary. The primary objectives would determine the outcome of the fight, and maybe the outcome of the story too. If one side has more objectives done, then that team wins. But if they both have an equal number of objectives accomplished, the mission might end in a stalemate. This would be interesting for story design, having 3 different outcomes to every fight. One in which you win, one in which you lose, and one in which nothing really happens. The secondary objective, on the other hand, would focus more on making the current map more balanced and favored on whichever side did the objective first. Or it could be used as a different little plot device in a later map. Maybe having the option of saving civilians will give one side less respawn time in another map. Maybe capturing an oil refinery or defending an oil refinery might mean more vehicle response, or just more vehicles in general from that on. Either way, it would all amount to multiple endings, depending on which team you're on and what the outcomes of every fight was. That's awesome in my opinion. I'd love to see that, and I'm pretty sure you'd love to see that too, now that I put the image in your mind. Imagine a campaign that holds 64 players plus. We can only dream, but damn is a good dream. Now, onto what I think is a good campaign on Titanfall. Titanfall is a great game. Actually, it's more of an okay game with a great core concept. Or a great core aspect, I guess. It's what I've dreamed of, essentially. A vehicle-based game where the foot units are considered useful instead of cannon fodder. You can jump out of your mech to fire at other players. That's great. In fact, it's Angry Joe's dream concept. His literal dream, like getting out of your mech and then firing at people. That was his dream. But unfortunately, the campaign was awful. I can't remember a single thing about it, except at one point you're in space, and then if you're on the rebel side, then this one mech breaks down a wall or something like that. I don't know. This campaign killed brain cells. It was extremely scripted and felt empty. There was only one game mode in the entire campaign, and the worst part, the winning and losing were predetermined. That means if your side has more control points captured and more people killed, the mission will say you lost. That is unbelievable, and it's just disgusting, disgraceful, and distracting. 3Ds. The worst. The worst of the Ds. 3Ds that you do not want to have in your frickin' game. Now, what would make a good Titanfall campaign? More or less the same thing as what I would think of a good Battlefield campaign. A series of missions where you determine the outcome of the ending with how much you won or lost. This is a story about military versus rebellion, though, so that wouldn't work out exactly. We'd have to think of another thing. So we could find... so it's military versus rebellions. So we could find some way to up the ante, though. How about there's 8 missions, and the first mission and the first 7 missions are based on getting resources and morale and people by your side. And it all leads up to one final mission where both sides face each other in one last battle. Each battle won would still give a different ending each time, but depending on if you won or lost the last battle, you could add some extra endings along with the ones you would still currently have. There was this one scene that I was talking about before in Titanfall Campaign where you were a rebel and you were right behind a guy in a busted up mech. That takes down the defenses of the military while taking damage, and then after it's burst through the wall, it explodes. That's an inspiring moment. How about we had that if the rebellion has lost 6 or 7 missions before the final mission? Wouldn't that be awesome? One final push to defend your cause? Give me liberty or give me death? Imagine that. Just imagine that for a minute. Just one true final blowout on an inspiring moment. Again, we can only dream, but goddamn, that is one good dream. So, to kind of wrap this up, I would like to say that these campaigns are kind of an empty husk of what they could have been, and I would have loved to see them go that way. These are AAA games, though. Games that had, like, tons of people developing the game. All these games, all this money, and all this budget, all this manpower going into one experience, and it's just bland. It's just kind of surprising that these campaigns suck. I would have loved to... Everyone would have loved to see that. Everyone would have loved to see their dollar going into something more valuable rather than $20 of empty experiences and cutscenes and all that crap. We would have loved to see it in like kind of like a more or like a new campaign experience altogether that hasn't even been seen before. That would get you millions of sales instead of just, oh, someone fires a rocket and killed a guy that you didn't care about and all that crap. But in all honesty, it's just disappointing, essentially. It's just not what it could have been, and instead they put less focus on the actual concept and more focus on marketing these games, and that's what truly sucks. Well, I hope you enjoyed my rambling, and if you really liked it, rate the video and comment about it if you want. If you'd like to see more of this, subscribe. Thanks for listening and have a good day. One that doesn't have crappy campaigns, like Titanfall and Battlefield.